The cold grey morning fog clung to the docks, blurring the line between sea and sky. A teenager, barely 16, slipped through the shadows like a whisper, his heart drumming louder than the distant ship horns. He wasn't supposed to be here. No, the rigid rules of the Navy had strictly forbidden civilians, and certainly boys of his age, from boarding the steel leviathans that prowled the deep. Yet somehow, the boy found himself standing before the gaping maw of a wartime submarine, a vessel that had devoured countless trained sailors without remorse. Its hull gleamed with wet steel, the smell of salt and oil hanging heavy in the air. Every bolt, every rivet seemed to hum with the promise of danger. His name didn't matter to the officers yet. He was just another shadow on the docks, a flicker in the periphery of their practiced eyes. But inside he carried a spark, a restless curiosity, a daring that bordered on foolishness, and a heart that beat to the rhythm of adventure. In his mind, the submarine wasn't just a war machine. It was a world of secret passages, hidden levers, and mechanisms that whispered stories of the deep. He imagined the claustrophobic corridors, the echoing hum of diesel engines, the muffled communication of men hunched over gauges and periscopes. To any observer, he might have seemed small, insignificant, but to him, this was the stage for a reckoning with fate itself. The boarding was chaotic, unplanned, yet almost cinematic in its execution. The boy moved with a mixture of hesitation and precision, slipping past the distracted sentries and the morning routines of the crew. He ducked beneath hatchways, pressed against bulkheads, and learned quickly that in this world, silence was survival. Every step echoed in his mind, but outside, the world carried on, unaware that a stowaway had claimed his place among seasoned men. Inside, the crew, preoccupied with drills and maintenance, did not immediately notice his presence. And yet a tension lingered, an unspoken awareness that something or someone was out of place. This first part of the story is not just about the boy's daring, it's about the collision of innocence and warfare. The officers, hardened by experience and bound by protocol, represented order and the meticulous machinery of war. The boy, by contrast, embodied curiosity, instinct, and untested courage. History rarely pauses for such collisions, yet here in this narrow corridor of steel and shadow, the stage was set. In the quiet moments before engines roared and depth charges threatened, the boy's heartbeat became a metronome for the tension that would soon ripple through the submarine's metal veins. He wandered into the control room, eyes wide but calculating. Buttons, levers, dials, and sonar screens loomed before him, alien yet fascinating. The officers glanced at him with confusion, suspicion, but the morning was busy, drills needed to continue. And so he remained unnoticed, an observer, a phantom, learning the rhythm of a vessel that had seen more war than most men could bear in a lifetime. Every story he had ever heard about the sea, about submarines lurking in darkness, about sailors holding their breath while enemy destroyers thundered above, all seemed to crystallize in this moment. He was, paradoxically, both invisible and central, an anomaly in the perfect calculus of military discipline. But beyond the physical presence of the boy, Part 1 also seeks to immerse the audience in the world of submarine warfare. The tension of being underwater, the claustrophobic reality of steel walls, the smell of diesel and sweat, the silent communication that could mean life or death. The story hints at the extraordinary challenges the crew will face, the looming danger of depth charges, and the improbable role this boy will play in the survival of the vessel. Every step he takes, every glance he throws at the controls, foreshadows the extraordinary events that will follow. It is here, in the cramped, humming heart of the submarine, that the improbable begins to take shape. The camera might linger on the boy's face, lit only by the dim green glow of control lights, showing wide eyes filled with awe and fear. The hum of machinery, the echo of boots on metal decks, the distant creak of hulls under water pressure, all form a symphony of anticipation. Outside, the waves lap against the bow, unaware of the drama hidden beneath. This is not just a story of war, it is a story of human ingenuity, instinct, and the way the smallest, seemingly insignificant actions can ripple through history. In this moment, the audience realizes that this boy is more than a stowaway. He is the unlikely heartbeat of a story that will defy expectation, testing the limits of courage, logic, and the very definition of heroism. Part 1 closes on a shot of the submarine's periscope piercing the fog, the boy standing near it, both observer and participant, his presence unnoticed but fated to become central. It is a slow-burn introduction, tension, character, and the silent promise of the extraordinary to come. As the submarine slipped beneath the surface, the world above melted away into a grey blur of mist and distant horizon. Below the waterline, the vessel transformed into a breathing, pulsating entity, metal ribs creaking under the pressure of the sea, machinery humming with relentless rhythm, and the faint hiss of air ducts reminding all on board that this was a sealed, self-contained world. For the 16-year-old boy, every sound was magnified, every vibration through the steel deck a physical echo of danger. It was as if he had entered the belly of a leviathan, and the sea itself was both predator and prison. The submarine was a marvel of engineering, designed to glide silently through the abyss while keeping enemies unaware of its presence. Inside, the corridors were narrow, barely wide enough for one man to navigate comfortably. Bulkheads loomed like walls of a steel cathedral, painted a muted grey, scuffed and worn from years of service. The air was thick with the mingling aromas of oil, metal, and the faint tang of seawater seeping through unseen cracks. It was claustrophobic, stifling, yet alive with purpose. Every gauge, dial and lever had a story, a function, a command to obey. The crew moved with practiced precision, each man hyper-aware of his role. One flick of a lever, one misread sonar ping, and death could descend without warning. The boy observed silently, tracing the flow of work. The engineers tending to diesel engines, the sonar operators hunched over screens and oscillographs, listening to the distant echoes of war. The captain, a figure carved from decades of stress and strategy, issuing orders with calm authority that concealed the weight of every life aboard. To the untrained eye, the submarine might have appeared a simple metal tube, but in reality, it was a fragile ecosystem of human skill and mechanical reliability, teetering on the edge of survival. The teenage stowaway quickly realized that submarines were nothing like the romantic tales of heroes and adventure he had imagined. Here, every breath was precious. Oxygen levels fluctuated as the vessel descended deeper, carbon dioxide monitors ticked quietly in the background, and every sealed hatch represented both protection and potential suffocation. The silence was deceptive. Even a small creak or unintended sound could alert enemy destroyers lurking above. The boy's initial awe transformed into acute awareness. Every step he took, every finger brushing a railing, had consequences he barely understood, yet instinct guided him with surprising clarity. Part 2 also plunges the audience into the technical dangers of underwater warfare. Depth charges, anti-submarine tactics, and sonar detection were not abstract concepts but immediate threats that could obliterate everything in seconds. The captain's orders were precise, yet the very depth of the ocean amplified risk exponentially. Water pressure threatened the hull from outside, while tension and fatigue gnawed at the crew from within. Every maneuver was calculated to evade enemy detection. Silent running protocols, unpredictable course changes, and careful management of speed and ballast. For the stowaway, the submarine was now a steel coffin drifting through a watery battlefield, where the margin for error was razor-thin. The cinematic tension is heightened by the submarine's intimate scale. The boy now navigates the narrow ladders connecting compartments, the hum of engines vibrating through his chest, and the muted conversations of men weighed down by responsibility. Each officer moves with a mix of stoicism and suppressed anxiety, their faces illuminated by dim red or green lights. Sonar screens pulse with echoes of the unseen world outside, each blip a possible threat or phantom of the deep. Even minor mistakes could have catastrophic consequences, yet here, the boy's presence adds an unexpected element of unpredictability. No one suspects that within this world of meticulous order, an untrained mind may soon influence survival in ways no manual could dictate. Beyond machinery and immediate danger, Part 2 focuses on psychological immersion. It conveys how isolation, darkness, and the immense pressure of the ocean affect humans. Men who had seen battle before whispered of luck and death in the same breath. The boy, observing from the periphery, felt his youthful fear sharpen into clarity. He noticed patterns, subtle vibrations, the cadence of engines, and even the faintest sounds bouncing through the hull. These sensory inputs, trivial to seasoned sailors, would later seed the solution that could save them all. The narrative subtly emphasizes that in the depths of war, survival often hinges on perception and instinct rather than sheer experience. As the submarine glided deeper into the inky blue of the Atlantic, the audience senses the dual reality of danger and fascination. The outside world is vast, hostile, and unseen, while inside, life pulses under layers of steel and human endurance. The boy's journey through these corridors is both physical and symbolic, a descent into an alien world where bravery, chance, and intellect will collide in unimaginable ways. Each moment underscores the fragility of life, the discipline required for survival, and the looming shadow of war above. Part 2 concludes with a slow tracking shot through the submarine's dimly lit interior, the boy's wide eyes reflecting engine lights, sailors hunched over instruments, the metallic walls reverberating with quiet tension, and the hum of the diesel engine vibrating like the heartbeat of the vessel. Outside, water pressure presses relentlessly on the hull, hinting at the lethal environment beyond. The stage is set for the approaching threat, the enemy destroyers, and for the boy's instincts to become more than just observation. The tension is built. The claustrophobic, mechanical underworld has been fully established, ready to plunge the audience into the imminent crisis. The ocean above was calm, deceptively serene, but beneath its glassy surface, a deadly hunt had begun. The submarine, once a silent predator of the deep, now felt exposed, vulnerable, and small against the might of the enemy destroyers tracking it relentlessly. Outside, the periscope trembled slightly as it pierced the waterline, scanning for the faintest disturbance in the waves. Every shadow, every ripple, every distant echo could signal impending doom. For the boy, the submarine had transformed from a marvel of machinery to a fragile cage, a metallic heart pumping fear through its steel veins. Inside, the crew moved with a heightened precision born of experience and sheer necessity. Each sonar blip was analyzed, interpreted, and weighed against past encounters with enemy vessels. The captain, a stoic figure carved by countless engagements, barked terse orders, eyes fixed on oscilloscopes and hydrophone readings. Officers leaned over control panels, whispering calculations, adjusting ballast tanks, and issuing commands that balanced risk against survival. The diesel engines hummed beneath, now more a threat than a tool, each vibration a potential giveaway to the enemy above. The first depth charge struck with a thunderous shock, a violent pulse that rattled the metal hull and threw the boy against the bulkhead. The sound was unlike anything he had imagined, a monstrous explosion, muffled and magnified by the surrounding water, a force that seemed intent on crushing everything inside. The crew's training kicked in immediately. They braced, measured depth changes, adjusted angles, and held their collective breath as seconds stretched into agonizing eternity. Yet in the midst of controlled chaos, the boy's unpracticed mind noticed details the experienced men overlooked. The subtle timing of the enemy's sonar pings, the pattern in the approaching waves, the way the water around the hull seemed to pulse before each strike. Time slowed within the submarine. The air grew heavier, tinged with the acrid scent of metal, oil, and fear. Men whispered, muttered, and shouted in a precise cacophony of panic and control. The boy pressed his hand to the wall, feeling the vibrations of distant explosions travel through the steel, his heart sinking with the rhythm of the hunt. Every glance at the sonar screen, every subtle movement of the periscope, hinted at the precision and lethality of the forces above. The ocean was no longer a neutral entity. It had become a hunting ground, a realm where one miscalculation could spell annihilation. Cinematic tension is amplified by the juxtaposition of youth and experience. The boy, inexperienced yet observant, now internalizes the danger in ways the hardened crew might have forgotten: instinct, pattern recognition, and an unfiltered attention to detail. He begins to anticipate the intervals of depth charge drops, the cadence of the destroyer's sonar sweeps. In his mind, the machinery of war becomes a puzzle, one that could be influenced by an unexpected perspective. It's a subtle seed, almost imperceptible, that hints at the pivotal role he will play in the coming moments. Outside, the enemy's sonar tracks the submarine with relentless determination. Each burst of sound, each ping echoing through the cold Atlantic, increases the pressure inside the steel hull. The boy watches as the crew executes evasive maneuvers, silent running, depth adjustments, zigzagging courses, but the destroyers adapt with terrifying accuracy. Explosions ripple through the water, causing the vessel to shudder violently. Instruments flicker, lights sway, and the claustrophobic environment transforms into a theater of panic and controlled chaos. Every heartbeat counts, every breath might be the last. The narrative tension is compounded by the psychological stakes. Men who have faced countless battles feel the gnawing anxiety of uncertainty. Their experience is invaluable, yet it cannot fully account for the unpredictable environment and the sheer randomness of underwater warfare. The boy, small and untested, is an anomaly within this precise machine, an element the enemy cannot anticipate. His silent observations, his instinctive calculations, and his attention to subtle patterns are quietly building toward an unorthodox solution, a solution that will challenge the rigid hierarchy and conventional tactics of seasoned sailors. Part 3 closes with the submarine's hull quivering under yet another near miss. The red and green lights of the control room illuminate tense faces, sweat gleaming under dim lighting, fingers hovering over levers and dials. The boy stands, unnoticed but fully alert, his mind absorbing the rhythm of survival, the cadence of death narrowly avoided. Outside, the destroyers circle, their engines growling like predators above a wounded prey. The audience is left at the peak of suspense. The submarine is still intact, the boy is still a bystander, yet the story is poised for an extraordinary pivot, a moment where innocence, instinct, and ingenuity may tip the balance between destruction and survival. The submarine groaned as if the ocean itself were pressing its judgment upon the men inside. Every shudder, every vibration from the hull carried the echo of death, a constant reminder that survival was no longer guaranteed. The boy, standing silently in the control room, felt a cold sweat trace the back of his neck. He had witnessed the skill of seasoned sailors, the precision of officers trained to survive the abyss, but now all their expertise seemed like a fragile thread, fraying under the relentless pursuit of the enemy. Depth charges exploded in carefully timed intervals above, sending shockwaves that rattled the steel skeleton of the submarine and turned the control room into a chamber of quivering nerves. The captain barked orders with grim authority, his voice slicing through the mechanical hum and muffled groans of the crew. Dive deeper, silent running, adjust ballast, evasive maneuvers now. Every command was executed with meticulous precision, yet the destroyers above anticipated each move with an almost uncanny accuracy. The submarine tilted violently, water flooding through intake pipes in brief spurts, and the boy clutched a railing, trying not to be thrown across the narrow corridor. The seasoned crew, trained to withstand panic, now whispered curses under their breaths. Fear was no longer hidden, it was palpable, wrapping around them like a thick fog, heavier than the ocean pressing on the hull. They tried everything, the textbook evasions, the zigzagging descent, the subtle manipulations of speed and ballast, but each attempt seemed predicted, countered, and rendered insufficient. Hydrophones picked up the unmistakable thrum of destroyer engines above, sonar pings tracing their path with lethal intent. The metallic walls around the buoy vibrated with the energy of explosions, and every man aboard realized the terrifying truth: experience had limits. Years of training, war-tested protocols, and instinct were now inadequate against the cold, mechanical precision of their pursuers. The submarine, which had once been a vessel of control and confidence, had become a fragile capsule teetering on the knife's edge of annihilation. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Sweat, fear, and the tang of diesel filled the air. Oxygen levels dropped subtly, each breath becoming a reminder of how vulnerable they were. Officers argued in hushed but urgent tones, the rigid hierarchy fracturing under pressure. Every decision felt weighted, irreversible, a miscalculation promising instant destruction. The boy, though silent, observed with an intensity that grew sharper by the second. He noted the timing of depth charges, the patterns of sonar sweeps, and the subtle vibrations through the hull that even the officers overlooked. While the experts struggled to regain control, he was forming an intuition, one born not of training but of instinct, a clear, precise understanding of the danger that was simultaneously simple and revolutionary. Cinematically, this part captures the ultimate helplessness of trained men facing overwhelming odds. Close-ups of hands trembling over levers, beads of sweat sliding down furrowed brows, and eyes scanning flickering sonar screens convey desperation. The submarine shudders violently again, lights swinging and alarms faintly ringing, creating a symphony of chaos. Every man inside feels the cold brush of mortality. Each sound above, the distant rumble of engines, the muffled sonar pulses, is a message of impending doom. The boy's perspective is crucial here. His youthful mind, unburdened by doctrine, notices patterns and possibilities that the experienced crew cannot see. It is the calm eye in the hurricane, a foreshadowing of the pivotal moment to come. For the audience, Part 4 is about tension, claustrophobia, and the fragility of human control. The narrative emphasizes how conventional wisdom, when confronted by novel threats, can fail spectacularly. It shows that survival in war is as much about creativity and instinct as it is about experience. The boy's observations, initially inconsequential, now hold the potential to alter fate itself. The audience senses a shift, a quiet, almost imperceptible change in the submarine's dynamic. The ordinary hierarchy of experience is about to collide with the extraordinary perspective of a child. As depth charges pound above, the camera would linger on the boy's wide, focused eyes, the sweat on his brow, and the tension coiled in his small frame. Officers glance at him with irritation and skepticism, unaware that the key to their survival may reside in this unnoticed observer. The hull creaks under pressure, water thrums against metal, alarms blink intermittently, and every breath feels borrowed from fate itself. The situation teeters on the brink. The crew's training has failed, conventional tactics are exhausted, and the ocean waits with cold patience for the slightest mistake. Part 4 ends with a deep, cinematic pause. The submarine quivers, silence briefly overtakes chaos, and the audience knows that the moment of reckoning, the boy's unorthodox idea, is imminent. The submarine quivered in the dark, a metal beast trapped in a sea of fury. Every depth charge above sent ripples of terror through the hull, shaking men from their discipline to raw instinct. Sweat strung the eyes of officers, hands trembled over levers, and minds raced with calculations that seemed futile against the merciless precision of the destroyers. Fear had settled over the crew like a thick, suffocating blanket. And yet, in the midst of chaos, a quiet observer, the 16-year-old boy stood still, his pulse strangely synchronized with the vibrations of the submarine itself. It was in this moment, when conventional tactics failed and hope dwindled, that his simple, seemingly childish idea began to take shape. No one had invited him to speak. His presence had been tolerated, barely noticed, even dismissed as a curious anomaly. But instinct, raw and untainted by doctrine, whispered a possibility he could not ignore. The pattern of depth charges above had revealed a subtle, almost imperceptible rhythm. The boy, silent, observed with The sonar pulses, though deadly, contained a vulnerability, a timing flaw that even the captain's trained mind had overlooked. His idea was not born from manuals or experience. It was born from observation, intuition, and the courage of youth willing to imagine the impossible. "Captain," he whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of engines and the distant echo of explosions. If we change our ballast differently, we can throw off their pattern." The words seemed absurd, almost laughable to those who had spent decades studying the art of war. Officers exchanged incredulous glances. The notion came across as naive, almost childish. Yet the boy's eyes, wide with clarity, conveyed something more, an unspoken certainty that only raw instinct could carry. The room fell into a tense silence. Every man knew that to ignore him was safe, but to trust him was unimaginable. The captain paused, fingers hovering above levers, evaluating the risk. Each second stretched into an eternity. The destroyers above circled with relentless calculation, each moment that passed increasing the peril of failure. Then, with a subtle nod, the captain made a decision that would etch this day into history. They would try it. The boy's idea, untested and unconventional, became their only weapon against the invisible hunter above. Mechanically, it was astonishing in its simplicity. Ballast tanks were adjusted in a precise sequence, exploiting a timing flaw in the enemy's sonar calculations. The crew followed instructions with a mixture of skepticism and desperation, the submarine responding as if it were alive, yielding to a rhythm dictated by instinct rather than doctrine. The metal hull vibrated and shifted, the engines adjusted, and the once predictable path of the submarine became erratic in a way that confounded the destroyer's calculations. Above, sonar operators mistook the movements as noise, as anomalies in the water, as anything but the controlled evasion of a submarine alive with human ingenuity. For the boy, every second of implementation was a heartbeat of tension. His hands hovered over nothing, yet he felt every vibration, every tremor, every change in pressure through the hull. The crew, once on the brink of panic, now followed his instructions with wary obedience. Officers whispered doubts, but each adjustment produced a subtle, almost imperceptible difference. A slight deflection, a deviation in depth, a timing that broke the enemy's rhythm. The impossible was unfolding. Survival, against all odds, was within reach because of a mind that dared to think differently, unburdened by the weight of convention. Cinematically, Part 5 is the epic moment of human ingenuity and instinct triumphing over fear. Close-ups linger on the boy's focused eyes, the subtle changes in the ballast gauges, and the faces of seasoned sailors as disbelief gives way to hope. The tension of the past hours crescendos into a fragile optimism, every heartbeat of the submarine synchronized with the boy's quiet courage. The outside world, the cold, indifferent ocean and the circling destroyers, is kept at bay, tricked by simplicity where complexity failed. As the final sequence of adjustments is completed, the destroyer's sonar pings become erratic, confused by the unpredictable movements of the submarine. Depth charges strike water where the vessel had already moved, exploding harmlessly away. The crew exchanges astonished glances, relief mingled with awe as the reality sinks in. They are alive. The boy, once dismissed as a stowaway and naive observer, now stands as the pivot of survival, his instinctive solution having rewritten fate. It is a quiet, profound victory in the heart of mechanical terror. Part 5 closes with a cinematic image of the boy leaning against the bulkhead, faint green and red lights casting dramatic shadows over his face. Officers, exhausted yet incredulous, acknowledge him with a nod, a silent recognition of a new kind of heroism. Outside, the dark ocean remains indifferent, yet within the steel walls of the submarine, human courage, intuition, and the audacity of youth have carved a fragile sanctuary of life. The submarine floated beneath the deep, silent now, almost impossibly still after the relentless storm of depth charges. Outside, the ocean was indifferent, its cold, infinite expanse unbroken by human drama, but inside, the vessel carried a story etched in sweat, fear, and courage. The boy leaned against the bulkhead, chest heaving, eyes wide and reflective, as if he were only now beginning to comprehend the enormity of what had transpired. Around him, the crew moved in slow, deliberate motions, faces pale but alive, adrenaline gradually yielding to exhaustion. They had survived. Against overwhelming odds, they had survived. The destroyers above had been tricked, deceived by the unpredictability of the submarine's movements. Every depth charge that had thundered down through the water had been met with ingenuity, with intuition, with a courage that no manual could teach. The boy's simple, childish idea, dismissed at first, then reluctantly trusted, had disrupted the enemy's calculations. The officers, once skeptical, now moved with reverence toward this stowaway who had, in a single stroke, altered the calculus of life and death. The dynamic of experience and instinct, authority and intuition, had collided and produced salvation in the most improbable of ways. In the control room, silence hung in the air like a tangible presence. Monitors glowed faintly, reflecting tired, astonished faces. The diesel engines hummed quietly, the rhythm of life restored to the vessel. Men who had been trained to anticipate every eventuality found themselves humbled by the brilliance of a mind untrained, unshaped by protocol, yet perfectly attuned to the invisible rhythms of danger. The boy, once invisible, now carried the weight of silent heroism. His youthful courage had proven that ingenuity is sometimes born in unexpected places, and that survival is as much about perception and daring as it is about skill and strategy. Part 6 also reflects on the emotional and psychological aftermath. Crew members slumped against bulkheads, sharing quiet, wordless acknowledgements. Officers exchanged glances that spoke of disbelief, respect, and perhaps a hint of awe. The boy's hands trembled slightly, the adrenaline of survival giving way to the deep, contemplative calm that follows near-death experiences. He realized that war was not just a series of tactics and maneuvers. It was human intuition, creativity, and sometimes the courage of a child that determined who lived and who perished. Cinematic tension gives way to relief, yet the story retains its weight. The submarine, a fragile steel vessel that had flirted with annihilation, now glided through the ocean with the quiet dignity of a survivor. The periscope reflected faint morning light, a subtle reminder of the world above, still vast, still indifferent, yet momentarily conquered. The boy's gaze lingered on it, a mixture of awe and newfound understanding. He had been insignificant once, a ghost among seasoned men, but now he was integral to history, a silent witness and an active agent in the extraordinary preservation of life. As the crew celebrated quietly, there was also reflection. Each man, hardened by countless battles, understood the fragile beauty of survival. They recognized that their experience, though invaluable, was not infallible. Chance, observation, and an unexpected perspective could, and had altered fate. The boy's story would remain largely untold in official records, yet its impact was undeniable. The narrative becomes a meditation on heroism, the unpredictability of war, and the human mind's capacity to rise above its own limitations. The final moments are cinematic in their composition. The submarine glides through the calm sea, the metal hull glinting under the first light of dawn. Inside, the boy leans against a bulkhead, a faint smile crossing his face. Officers move around him, acknowledging his role with quiet gestures. The audience senses both closure and awe. The vessel survived, the crew survived, and the extraordinary courage of an untrained mind had rewritten the rules of survival. The hum of machinery, the subtle creak of the hull, and the gentle slosh of water outside combine into a symphony of triumph, reflection, and human resilience. Part 6 closes with a slow fade on the submarine's silhouette beneath the golden light of dawn, emerging from the deep, a testament to courage, instinct, and the unexpected heroes who emerge in moments of crisis. History, indifferent and vast, had been altered that day by a single heartbeat, a boy who dared, observed, and acted when all else seemed lost.